Your MSIS, your CISSP, those are a lot of acronyms that I think most people, unless they're in the industry, don't know what the heck I just said. Maybe one of the most relevant points and biggest challenges that we see is that the notion of security is somewhat nebulous. People don't understand the framework being used, and they think it's more of an art and less of a science. In other words, there might be advice to do this as an all-encompassing solution, or maybe even layers of this, whatever this is. How is it that a security professional like yourself frames what needs to be done and why?
What I like to say is security is everyone's job. We don't want people to think that we're their adversaries. We don't want them to think that we're the security police, because really our job is to protect them, not necessarily to monitor and control them.
Right.
I mean, there is such a thing as insider threat, but that really can be mitigated by maintaining employee morale and also separation of duties. But that's kind of getting into details. Ultimately, what we want is everyone to feel like they're participating and everyone to understand why the security is in place to help them do their job and help them do it safely. So really, end user training is just so critical to making sure this works. If there can be roundtables where people are allowed to ask questions, if it can be part of onboarding where they're shown what the security controls and tools are and they're given some familiarization.
Maybe one of the best investments you make then is, not to talk us out of potential, but is to educate your own people.
Oh, absolutely. And there's great programs out there that can just get people informed on what the threats are. Generally, you don't want to drag people down too much into technologies. I don't necessarily want to sit someone down and be like, here's what our security incident and event manager platform is. You need to learn how to pull queries. No.
Yeah.
But what we care about is them knowing, hey, traffic over the internet that you're doing is being monitored.
Yeah.
Be aware this is a business tool. It needs to be used for business purposes.
Setting standards of
but
behavior.
It makes it safer because anything that's out of the norm we now know to respond to.
Yeah.
Events need to be actionable. And providing people an outlet or a way to use things in a way, because employee morale is very important, that's safe. I have no problem with BYOD, with people using their phones and things like that. In fact, I think it should be encouraged, but it should be done in a way that is controlled from the business standpoint, but also easy to use from the client standpoint. So they're not coming up with loopholes or workarounds that then bypass the security controls, because then we can't help them.
Yeah. So you frame your belief system in security around a common frame. Is that NIST?
So the NIST Cybersecurity Framework is probably the foundation for any cybersecurity framework that we're going to implement. Part of that is because it's so neutral. So the NIST is the National Institute of Science and Technology, and they established this framework based on fairly neutral, high-level standards that could apply to any business. So you can then add on the industry-specific things. So if you start with these fundamentals that really everybody should be following, things like backups, things like user controls and training, things like data classification, just keeping track of how vital is this data, who has access to it, then you can start to build up from that. So you can be HIPAA compliant, you can be PCI DSS compliant, you can be ISO 2700. Like they're just a good way to get started, really, and they're self-assessed. So are you familiar with any of the other security, basically compliant levels and
CIS, but I think that's really NIST is a stem off of CIS.
And SOC 2, things like these.
Yeah.
You have to have auditors come in and confirm that you're there. It's definitely recommended, but it can be arduous, and there's a lot of buy-in, and nobody, especially the business leaders, want to find out that they spent all this money to be audited and they failed, and now they have to start all over. So self-assessing and using some of these free tools and guidelines from experts who've been working in this field for decades can really help you start getting security at your foundation, and then you can build up from there.